Have you ever heard of a place so isolated that even maps pretend it doesn't exist? A town buried deep in the Appalachian Mountains where the river runs black, and the children aren't quite human. Locals called it Hollow Creek, a town erased from state records after a wave of mysterious births in the late 1970s. Every child born there had something terribly wrong, their heads too small, their eyes too alert, as if they remembered something no one else could. Doctors blamed pollution. The townsfolk blamed a curse. But what they found in the water proved neither theory could explain what was really happening. Because when the creek turned black, something ancient woke beneath it, and the children were its messengers. Tonight, we're going to Hollow Creek, where science failed, the dead whispered, and the truth about those children was never meant to be told. Beat, low ominous music builds. If you think you've heard every small-town horror story before, you're wrong. This one wasn't supposed to survive. But somehow, it did. There's a place deep in the Appalachian Mountains called Hollow Creek, a town that time forgot, buried beneath layers of forest and silence. It was once a small mining settlement, surrounded by blackened rivers and mist that never seemed to lift. For decades, the locals whispered about the children who were born there, children with small, oddly shaped heads and unsettlingly sharp eyes. Doctors called it microcephaly, a rare neurological disorder that causes stunted brain growth. But to the people of Hollow Creek, it was no illness. It was a warning. They called it the Mark of the Hollow. It began in 1979, when the old mining company shut down after years of chemical dumping. The creek that once gave the town its name turned dark, and the fish began to float to the surface, lifeless and bloated. Within months, pregnant women across the valley began giving birth to infants who didn't look quite right. Their skulls were smaller than normal, their faces oddly symmetrical, their eyes too wide, too knowing. They never cried, only watched. No one wanted to talk about it. But the old hospital records, what little survived, told a story that shouldn't have been forgotten. In the dusty archives of Hollow Creek Hospital, a single folder was found sealed shut with wax. Inside were notes written by a state medical examiner sent to study the outbreak. Her words were brief, but chilling. The children do not respond to pain or light. Their behavior is synchronized. When the power flickers, they all turn their heads at the same moment, toward the same empty corner. Rumors spread that the creek wasn't poisoned by chemicals at all, but by something buried far beneath the mines. Workers had once spoken of finding bones deep underground, too large to be human, too old to belong to any known creature. The company covered it up, sealed the tunnels, and left Hollow Creek to rot. Years passed, but the children grew stranger. They didn't attend school. They rarely spoke, yet when they did, they echoed words others hadn't said aloud. Visitors who came through town described hearing whispers at night, soft humming from the direction of the water. A few claimed to see small figures standing by the creek at dawn, motionless, staring into the fog. When state authorities returned in the early 80s, the town was nearly abandoned. The hospital was boarded shut. But inside, on the nursery floor, they found dozens of handprints in dried mud, tiny, delicate, smeared across the glass windows as though pressed from the outside. Every birth record, every photograph of the children, had been removed. Only one file remained, marked simply with a single name that had been crossed out in red ink. Locals who still live near Hollow Creek say that after sunset, the forest changes. The air feels heavier, as if watched. On certain nights, the wind carries a low, melodic humming that moves like a pulse through the trees. Hunters avoid the water now, claiming the creek reflects faces that aren't their own. And those who've tried to take samples of the soil say their equipment fails, compasses spin wildly, and recordings capture faint voices repeating the same words over and over again. "He's still in the water." In 2003, hikers discovered a derelict cabin about 2 miles from the old hospital. Inside, the walls were covered in crude charcoal drawings, small-headed figures with hollow eyes, standing beside a black river. Dozens of them. Each one smiling. There was no sign of who drew them, but a pile of children's shoes lay neatly by the door, untouched by decay. When the Environmental Protection Agency returned to test the ground near the creek years later, their instruments detected traces of radiation that shouldn't have existed. Deep beneath the silt, They found metallic fragments resembling human vertebrae, too perfect to be natural, too warped to be man-made. Nearby, in the mud, was a single small footprint. Fresh. Today, Hollow Creek is off the maps. No GPS points there, and no official road leads in or out. Yet every so often, campers report strange laughter echoing through the valley, thin, childlike giggles that fade as soon as you turn to listen. Some say the children never died. That their bodies changed, adapting to whatever they were exposed to. Others believe they went back to where they came from, the water. Because on nights when the moon is high and the creek is still, reflections ripple against the surface. And if you stare too long, you might see faces looking back at you. Small heads. Wide eyes. Grinning as if they've been waiting for someone to notice them again. So if you ever find yourself near Hollow Creek, don't follow the sound of laughter. Don't look into the water. And whatever you do, if you hear the humming, run. Because the children of Hollow Creek are still here. And they never forgot who poisoned their home.